Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel here. Now today we are looking at a gaming PC that I have built, and I think this is quite a good looking PC. It has the Deepcool CC560 case. This is the one with the standard bluish fans that comes with Deepcool. I think it's meant to replicate that color, and that's sort of like Deepcool's color now. This has a 4th gen i7 CPU. You can see me shooting the video there in the background. But it has a 4th gen i7 CPU, a 4790 if I recall. It's the K SKU, so it is unclocked to 4 gigahertz, clocked to 4 gigahertz, and it has a custom CPU cooler that I don't recognize. I don't know which one that is. It has an RX570 8 gigabytes, 16 gigs of RAM, Corsair Vengeance RAM, and apart from that, it has a network card and a I think it has a 700 watt power supply. It has a M.2 drive, not NVMe. This was before NVMe. This is a 4th gen. So this is the high-end 4th gen. So that was before NVMe, but after SSDs, if I can put it that way. And yeah, this is a decent PC even now for gaming specifically, and I think it's quite a looker. It's quite unique looking and quite cool looking. So yeah, just to quickly talk about it a little bit, I haven't been active on the channel much lately. It's been a little bit difficult. Been really busy working on other things, but I want to throw in a video now and then, so decided to do this one. I had this PC coming through and just wanted to make a video on it. So that's what I'm doing. So we're just going to test it out, see how it does, and basically the point of the video is to see if hardware that is around 8 years old now is still worth using and is still worth considering for an HD specific build. I think it will be, but I think the GPU is probably going to be a little bit weak for the CPU. So with that said, let's get into the benchmarking. Stay with me. Alright, getting into the first game here, and this game is called Hellbound. It's a game that I always like to try, well not always, but I sometimes like to try on PCs that are a little bit older, you know, your DDR3 PCs, not necessarily some of the newest PCs. This game is a good representation of older games. It's a little bit newer itself in terms of release date, but the sort of visuals it has are sort of like an older style, yet I still think it looks really good. And I think it's quite an interesting game. So yeah, just going to play around a little bit. Right now we don't have VSync enabled, but it is seemingly capped to 60. This is running on Ultra graphics, and it is running off of a hard drive, but we don't seem to be having any stutters, and we have quite a smooth, quite a solid frame time, so that doesn't seem too bad at all, and it's definitely very playable on this system, and it looks quite good too. Now this is running at HD and it's running at grotesque settings, which is the maximum setting, so to say. And yeah, like I said, this is quite a fun game, quite a good looking game. It does drop into the 50s sometimes. It hasn't dropped below 50 yet, but yeah, it's a good result considering it's running at HD maximum settings. So yeah, I think it's quite a good result, and I think it looks quite good too. This keyboard's space bar is a little bit weird, so it's quite difficult to jump. I don't have any nice keyboards at the moment, so I was kind of just using this one, but yeah, this space bar is kind of stuck. But anyway, this gives us a chance to reset from here and yeah, just continue the conversation on the game. So there we go. So it's a good looking game. No issues in terms of CPU or memory. Everything seems to be running quite well, and it looks quite well. It looks quite nice as well. So yeah, pretty happy with this result overall. Obviously this isn't the most demanding game in the world, but yeah, regardless of that, it is still running really well. So good results on this one. This is on the lower spectrum of games that we'll be testing, but it's always good to know that it can play these games comfortably as well. So if I had to wager a guess, I'd say it averaged around 60 FPS. And the GPU is running a little bit hot at 90 degrees Celsius. Might be a bit of a problem there. The CPU is running at 50 degrees Celsius, and the RAM, we are using around half of the RAM available, around 7 gigs. We have 16 gigs available. But this little bit of a lower frame rate can be attributed to the heat of that CPU as well. Probably going to need to replace that CPU, that GPU before selling it. But with that said, let's move on to the next one. Let's do it. Okay, next up we have Hitman on HD Ultra, and right off the bat this is getting also around the 60 FPS mark. We are getting 50 right now and a frame time of 20 milliseconds. Again, using around 8 gigs of RAM, and the GPU is at 80 degrees, which is a little bit cooler than what it was, and the CPU is at around 60. The GPU utilization seems to be a little bit broken there, but the CPU is at around half most of the time, and this is a more CPU intensive game. Altogether, the PC is pulling around 150 watts in terms of the CPU and GPU, so that's not too bad. We could probably up that a little bit, but then the temperatures would get even hotter. In terms of performance, it's been around 50 for the most part, still around 50, which, isn't the best result for a game like this. This is running in DirectX 11. I might try DirectX 12 to see what the difference is. But all in all, it's a decent result, and it looks quite good as well. I think that with a little bit of tweaking, you should be able to get it between 60 and 70 in terms of average FPS, because this average is a little bit low at around 50. But like I said, I will try the DirectX 12 as well, and we'll see if that makes a big difference. But yeah, apart from that, there's not too much more to be said. This is definitely playable, even though it's not the best result. But like I said, I do feel there's some performance being left on the table. So let's tinker a little bit and see what it's like in DirectX 12. Let's do it. Okay, so this is the second run of the Hitman benchmark, and this one is running in DirectX 12. Exactly the same settings, but instead of DirectX 11, it is now DirectX 12. And right off the bat, this is performing a lot better. We were stuck at around 40 to 50, now we are over 100. So this does seem to be a lot better for this card to run in DirectX 12. Now, that might just be due to the drivers that I updated recently, but it does definitely run a lot better. The frame time is also a lot better now. The GPU is still extremely hot. That is an issue that I'm going to have to look at after this this benchmark run that I'm doing. I'm definitely going to repaste the GPU and see why it is running so hot. But in terms of power output, the CPU and GPU are together around 150, not even 150, so it's not too bad. The GPU is maxed out, so I think that if you do have a CPU like this, a 4th gen i7 K-SKU, I think this is running at 4 gigahertz. It might be better to pair it with a 590 instead of a 570. Now this is a 578 gig, so it does have that capacity for texture, which makes games look a lot better. But in terms of performance, something like the 580 or the 590 will serve you better and might be a better match for this CPU specifically. This is an older CPU, but it is being underutilized a little bit right now. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Alright, next up here we have Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and this game is running at high settings on HD, of course, and so far it is also around that 60 FPS mark, but again the GPU is running a little bit hot, and it is being utilized to the fullest. The CPU is a little bit hotter now as well, at around 70, and we are using around half the CPU power. Now this is quite a capable CPU even now. It is only a quad core, but it is a 8-threaded quad-core, and the CPU is pulling around 70 watts. I don't seem to have the metric up for the GPU. I'll put that up for the next benchmark. But again, still around that 60 FPS mark. And of course, this is a RX570, which, is a capable graphics card still, but not one of the best around, obviously. Sort of like a firmly lower end mid-range card now. But still, it gets the job done for HD gaming. If you want to game at medium to some games ultra settings, this is a good sort of card to look at and a good one to consider for 60 FPS HD gaming, mostly ultra, high to ultra settings. We are using around 8 gigs of RAM, and the GPU is still around 90 degrees, but it does seem to have flattened out at that temperature. And here we're getting a little bit of a higher FPS at around 90, and it's a relatively good result overall. Not one of the best ones we've had, but not a bad result either. If you were to play a game with these kinds of settings, it's not a bad result at all. This is probably equivalent to a Series S in terms of performance, to maybe a little bit worse, but in terms of price, the system isn't that expensive. You could purchase a system like this for around $300 to $400. So I'm not exactly sure what a Series S costs anyway, but of course it's the old conversation. With a PC you can do a lot more. But the point is, this is running quite well. I think it's going to average at around 65 or so FPS, and I think it's overall it's a pretty good result. I'm quite happy with it, and of course it's a good looking game. So let's wait for the metric to load, the benchmark result metrics, and we'll see how it did in terms of average frame rates and in terms of stability. Overall, I think it's quite a good result, and it achieved quite a smooth frame time as well. Like I said, for the next metric I'll put on some more of these. For the next benchmark I'll put on some more metrics, but for this one we are GPU bound, so the GPU is a little bit weaker than what the CPU is, but we got an average of 61, so that's not bad at all considering we are running at HD high. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the next one. Let's do it. Okay, getting into the Far Cry New Dawn benchmark here, and as is standard for this suite, seemingly we are in the 60s. This is running at HD high settings with ultra textures, I believe, and it is doing quite well. It is at around 80 now, and it is steadily rising. I do think we will have some drops, but overall this is rising towards 100. It might cap out at around 85 to 90. It's a good result. The GPU is still extremely hot, and the GPU is still being overworked. The CPU is not doing much. The CPU is pulling a little bit more wattage right now, but in terms of performance, we are closer back to 60 now, but between 50 to 80 is sort of the seemingly achievable range for this test, and it looks fantastic as well. So this will play Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn really well. Average around 70 FPS. So the average is 67 and the maximum is 87. So it's a good result. High settings HD, and definitely a good one. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the last benchmark. Let's do it. Okay, getting into Doom Eternal, and this is running at Ultra, I believe, and obviously it's Ultra HD. Let me check. It is running at high. Let's put it on Ultra. Okay, so it's running on Ultra, and it looks good, of course, and it is running at around 100 right now. You'll have to excuse my gameplay. This is an office mouse. I do not have a keyboard and mouse at the moment for this. So I'm using a broken keyboard and a office mouse to test this on, so don't expect too much. But yeah, in terms of performance, we are getting between 80 and 90 FPS, which is pretty good. Now this is not the most demanding game to play, of course, but I still think like this is quite a good result. Probably we could do a little bit better if we tweaked some of the settings a little bit, but it's definitely not unplayable or bad or anything like that. And this is running at HD Ultra, so you know it is getting up there in terms of settings. Well, this mouse is difficult to use. Yeah, it seems to be between 70 and 100. Now the GPU is still really hot, but apart from that, everything else looks good. The CPU is being used a little bit more in this game, but still not enough. Like I said, matching this with a 590 would probably be a bit of a better idea, or even getting into the 5000 series of AMD cards, maybe something like a 5700X or something like that, because this is just a little bit underpowered right now in terms of the GPU, of course. But you know, it's playable. Most games will run quite well, and this is obviously a good result. So with that said, let's talk about it, and let's do the outro. Let's do it. Okay, so that's it for the testing, and yeah, I think that the PC did quite well. Something that I said multiple times throughout the testing was that I think the GPU does not quite match the CPU in terms of performance and in terms of power usage and output. So I think that you would be better off pairing this CPU with something like a GTX 590 or a 5700X from AMD. And if you go in NVIDIA, probably something like a 1660 Ti or perhaps a GTX 1070 or a 1070 Ti. Something along those lines. I think that would be the best pairing for a machine like this. But with that said, this is running at HD. Each game ran at high settings to ultra settings, and it didn't disappoint in anything except maybe the DirectX 11 result for Hitman. That was quite bad. But apart from that, the PC did quite well, and I think in terms of gaming, even in 2024, this is all you need. Now, this is going to run you about $300 to $400. It cost me a little bit more, but I bought some of the parts new, like the case and some of the SSDs and stuff like that. So it cost me just a little bit more. I think it cost me around $400, but I don't think that's terrible, and I think that this will outperform or be on par with a Series S. So I do think there's a lot of value in a PC like this, and of course you can use it for a lot more. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. I hope you like the PC. I think it's quite a good looking PC, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers.